Kyle Pratt is the kind of woman who trusts what she can measure. She is an American propulsion engineer based in Berlin, a woman who speaks the language of thrust ratios and load-bearing tolerances, who finds more comfort in the logic of machines than in the messiness of people. She helped design the very plane she is about to board, but grief has no tolerances. Her husband David is dead, reportedly fallen from the roof of an aviation manufacturing building 6 days ago, and Kyle carries that loss the way you carry something too heavy to set down. She does not believe it was a suicide. She has no evidence either way, only the weight of not knowing and a daughter to bring home. That daughter is Julia, 6 years old, gap-toothed and watchful in the way children are when they sense their parent is breaking. The night before their flight, Kyle catches something outside their Berlin apartment, a man in the street, his face tilted up toward Julia's window, perfectly still. She doesn't know him. She tucks the image somewhere in the back of her mind, beneath everything else already buried there, and tries to sleep. Morning arrives gray and cold, snow softening the city. A taxi waits at the curb. Kyle gets Julia dressed, loads their bags, and moves through the motions of departure. Inside the terminal, her attention slips for just a moment and Julia is gone. Kyle's blood goes cold. She turns in a slow circle, scanning strangers, adults, faces she doesn't know. Then she finds her, over by a sundries stand, perfectly fine, completely unbothered. Kyle exhales a breath she didn't realize she was holding, pulls Julia close, and tells her firmly never to wander without permission. Julia nods, the way children nod when they don't fully believe the rule applies to them. They are among the first to board the Elgin 474, a massive double-deck transatlantic aircraft that Kyle helped bring into the world from drafting tables and equations. She knows this plane the way a sculptor knows their own hand.
Stop, wait, stop, no pushing.
They've just shut down Frankfurt.
We apologize once again for
They have to knock the ice off. You just sleep, honey. Over in New York?
Daddy too?
Daddy too.
Julia presses her nose to the cold window and breathes fog onto the glass, then traces a tiny, crooked heart in the condensation with one finger. Clumsy, sincere, the kind of mark only a child leaves. Kyle settles in beside her, takes her prescribed anxiety medication, the kind that blunts the sharpest edges of grief, and closes her eyes. She wakes to find Julia's seat empty. The one-armed stuffed bear is still there, wedged into the cushion. That detail stops her cold. Julia does not go anywhere without that bear. Not to the bathroom, not anywhere. Kyle moves up the aisle, checking faces, scanning rows, asking anyone who will meet her eye if they've seen a little girl. Nobody has. The unease doesn't build slowly, it lands all at once, fully formed and airless. She finds the flight attendant Stephanie and asks for an announcement. Missing child, 6 years old, curly hair. Stephanie takes it to the intercom.
I just need the aisles clear.
Okay. I'm gonna have to ask you to go back to your seat.
When she comes back, her expression is careful in a way that means she has rehearsed what she is about to say. There is no record, she tells Kyle, of a child boarding this flight. No Julia Pratt on the manifest. Kyle reaches for the boarding pass. It isn't in her bag. She looks up at the overhead bin. Julia's backpack, the one she couldn't have reached without help, is gone too.
Someone has my daughter, do you understand? Captain, I need to speak to you.
From several rows back, a sky marshal named Gene Carson watches all of this without moving. He has the particular stillness of someone trained to observe rather than intervene, and he has already begun forming conclusions. Kyle demands the captain. Captain Marcus Rich listens with the measured patience of a man who has handled difficult passengers before, then asks gently whether she is on any medication. Kyle tells him about the sleeping pills. She tells him about David, about the roof, about her refusal to accept the word suicide. Rich absorbs all of it, and what Kyle sees moving behind his eyes is not concern. It is a diagnosis being assembled in real time. He orders a search, more out of protocol than belief, and the crew sweeps the aircraft from nose to tail. Lights on. Passengers seated, every lavatory, every galley, every storage compartment checked. Stephanie combs the avionics section below deck. Nothing. No Julia. Not a trace.
No, I don't need an escort. Tell me something. If somebody took her?
Then Kyle sees him, the man from the street outside their apartment, the Egyptian passenger sitting several rows back, watching her with the same unreadable stillness as the night before. She goes straight at him, voice fraying at the edges, accusing him of taking her daughter. He is furious. He produces a hotel receipt he was nowhere near her building that night. The confrontation turns physical before it resolves. Carson steps in, and Kyle ends up restrained.
Mind if I ask you an obvious question? Her name isn't on the manifest.
Obviously, they'd have to have somebody from the crew involved.
Carson, in that moment, makes a comment that is designed to close the matter. He says that her husband's death is starting to make more sense to him, that after a couple of hours in her company, even he might consider jumping. It is precisely the kind of thing you say when you want someone to stop being believed. Kyle files it away like everything else. Then Captain Rich receives the wire from Berlin. A hospital there confirms that Julia Pratt was present when her father fell and that the child also died that day from internal injuries sustained in the fall. The captain reads this. He looks at Kyle, and the case against her sanity becomes airtight in his mind. A woman who lost her husband and her daughter in the same moment, who has been taking sedatives on a long-haul flight, who has now assaulted a passenger and demanded a full aircraft search. He is not looking for a missing girl anymore. He is managing a breakdown. Kyle is handcuffed to her seat. A therapist named Lisa, traveling aboard by coincidence or providence, sits beside her and speaks in the soft, careful register of someone trying to coax a person back from an edge. And here is the most terrifying moment of the film, not the accusation, not the handcuffs, but the moment Kyle actually starts to believe them. The pills, the grief, the exhaustion. What if Julia is truly gone? What if she has been carrying a ghost across the Atlantic?
But it's impossible to move on if we haven't accepted. You could imagine...
Then she looks at the window. The condensation heart is still there. Small, lopsided, real dried now into the faintest trace on the glass, but undeniably present. Julia drew that. Julia sat in that seat. Julia is on this plane. Something shifts inside Kyle like a bolt sliding home, and every doubt that almost swallowed her dissolves.
Am I allowed to go to the restroom?
She tells Lisa she needs the bathroom. One hand is freed. She goes inside, waits, then climbs into the overhead crawl space. A passage she knows exists because she put it there in the design schematics years ago. She moves through it and sabotages the aircraft's electronics. Oxygen masks drop throughout the cabin, lights cut out, passengers grab for masks in the sudden dark. Carson spots the move immediately and knows exactly who is responsible. In the chaos, Kyle drops down through a dumbwaiter to the lower freight deck.
Where is she?
The hold is dim and cold and smells of aircraft fuel and something older. She finds David's casket. The suspicion she has been refusing to name presses in. What if Julia is inside? She unlocks it, opens the lid. David is there, exactly as he should be. Julia is not.
Turn around.
Carson finds her moments later. He locks her back up and announces over the intercom that the flight is diverting to Goose Bay Airport in Newfoundland, where Kyle will be taken into custody. He escorts her through the cabin, and somewhere in the middle of the aircraft, a single passenger begins to applaud. Then another. The sound spreads the length of the deck passengers clapping for her removal, not because they understand what's happening, but because she has frightened them, and frightened people need someone to blame. Kyle walks through it with her head level and her eyes forward. She is placed in the last row. She makes one final appeal to Carson, let her search the plane when they land. Just one more look. Carson listens. His expression softens, just slightly, into something resembling consideration. He tells her he will go speak to the captain. He goes to the freight deck instead. From inside David's casket, he lifts out 2 compact explosive devices and a detonator hidden there from the very beginning, slipped in by the Berlin mortuary director before the casket ever reached the airport, tucked into cargo that protocol guarantees will never be x-rayed. Carson carries them down to the avionics section, and there, curled against the base of the platform in her winter coat, her small backpack beside her, is Julia, unconscious, breathing in slow, drugged pulls, alive. Carson arms the explosives and attaches them to the platform, and now the architecture of the conspiracy becomes fully visible. Carson, Stephanie and the Berlin mortuary director planned all of this in advance. They murdered David Pratt, not an accident, not a suicide specifically to weaponize his casket. A casket moves through airport security untouched, unsearched, a moving vault. They smuggled the liquid explosives inside it. They kidnapped Julia mid-flight, rolling her out on a food service cart while Kyle slept, banking on the fact that no one in that cabin would notice or care about one extra item on a trolley. Julia was the key. As long as Carson held the child, Kyle would eventually unlock the casket herself, handing him access to the detonator without ever implicating him. Now Carson tells Captain Rich that Kyle is holding the plane for ransom $50 million, or the explosives detonate. The airline pays. Then Carson's real plan closes. Kill Kyle, detonate the avionics bay with Julia still inside, press Kyle's dead hand around the detonator, and walk away $50 million richer, leaving a dead, grieving mother to take the blame for everything. It is, in its way, a beautiful plan, cold and complete and almost perfect.
Maybe she killed them both.
They land at Goose Bay. FBI agents ring the tarmac. Passengers file out into the flat Newfoundland light, relieved, rattled, wanting to be anywhere else. Kyle watches from her window as Carson moves to the captain's side. She hears the captain tell her it's over. The ransom has been paid. The charade is finished. And something crystallizes. Not just understanding, but strategy.
Your money has been wired, just as you asked.
The agents.
She leans into the lie. She is the hijacker? Fine. Then she commands it. The crew disembarks. Carson stays. Carson knows that any resistance now collapses the entire fiction, so he stays. The door closes. The aircraft falls quiet. Two people left inside a plane that one of them built. Kyle hits Carson with the fire extinguisher. Clean, fast, no hesitation, cuffs him to a rail and takes the detonator from his pocket. Stephanie crawls out of hiding, ashen, flashlight in hand, and Kyle looks at her and asks the one question she already knows the answer to. She's in avionics, isn't she? Stephanie's face confirms it before a word leaves her mouth.
Isn't she?
Carson wakes up too quickly. He finds the gun and opens fire, driving Kyle back through the cabin at a run until she seals herself in the cockpit. He works the door with words, reasoning, threatening, bargaining, and Kyle opens the upper hatch and pitches a binder into the compartment above. The thud pulls him upstairs. She slips out the moment he's gone. Stephanie is in the corridor, pale and vibrating, slapping a flashlight against her palm like a woman trying to work up courage for something she has long since run out of. Kyle talks her down in 4 words, then puts her down with one punch. Stephanie panics and runs, off the plane and gone, abandoning Carson to whatever comes next. Kyle descends to avionics and finds her daughter. Julia's on the floor, coat tucked around her, backpack beside her, breathing in the slow rhythm of deep sedation. Kyle drops to her knees. She pulls Julia against her chest and holds on. There are no words for this moment, and the script is wise enough not to try. Carson arrives behind her. He is done with pretense. He tells her how each piece was done, David killed for his casket, Julia taken in a food cart, the math of his contempt for every person on that aircraft who never looked twice at anything that wasn't their own seat. He raises the gun. Kyle stands, lifts Julia, and carries her to the non-combustible hold at the aircraft's rear, a reinforced bay she designed, whose walls she knows will absorb what's coming. Carson fires as she pulls the door closed. Inside, in the dark, with Julia's weight against her and the detonator in her hand, Kyle makes the only calculation that matters. She presses it. The explosion moves through the avionics section like a fist. Carson is gone. The aircraft buckles, its landing gear blown, smoke rising in columns against the gray sky. Outside, 200 passengers and a ring of federal agents watch the plane burn. Then the hold door opens.
What is she holding?
She's holding her daughter.
Kyle Pratt walks out onto the tarmac carrying her daughter. The silence that lands on that crowd is not the silence of shock. It is the silence of people who understood all at once exactly what they did and did not do. The next morning, inside the terminal at Goose Bay, Captain Rich finds Kyle in the waiting area with Julia asleep across her lap. He apologizes, no preamble, no defense, just the plain words dropped at her feet. It is not enough, and he clearly knows it. Across the terminal, Stephanie is escorted out in handcuffs by FBI agents. An agent tells Kyle that the Berlin mortuary director has been arrested and that they are tracking a fourth accomplice, the person who scrubbed Julia's name from the manifest before the plane ever left the ground. Kyle carries Julia out through the terminal, past every face that dismissed her, that applauded her removal, that decided what kind of woman she was before they knew anything about her at all. The Egyptian passenger, the man she accused, the man who had a hotel receipt and every right to never look at her again, steps forward and helps load her bags into the van. Julia wakes up. She blinks at the light, at the strangers, at the gray sky above Newfoundland, and asks the only question she has: are we there yet? That's the ending of the movie, Flightplan. Subscribe for more videos like this, turn on notifications, and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.